Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Peter at AppSheet, and I'm joined by Gwen.
Hi, everybody.
And we are getting set up here for this week's App Making Fundamentals webinar. Thank you for joining. I think we'll take a few minutes here just to kind of run through some housekeeping items and hopefully give a little bit of time for a few more people to join. For getting started, for those of you that are here, if you've been here before, what we're trying to do in this weekly webinar is make sure that all the fundamentals of AppSheet, the different sections in the platform, are addressed, and that everybody has a good solid understanding of where to go in the platform to help build the functionality that you need for your specific scenario. And we're going to do that by demoing a specific app that's already been built, just kind of deconstructing it and poking around in it and figuring out, how it was built. And this week we're going to be looking at a sales management app that is kind of a beast. This is an app that an app creator built and shared with us, and it's got a lot in it. So we're going to run through kind of the essentials, the basics of the AppSheet platform, and then in the context of looking at this particular sales management app, and then dig into some of the real specific features and show you how you can replicate that in your own app. So maybe I'm just going to give this 1 minute. And just to let a few more people join, and then we'll open up the editor. So while during the webinar, you have the GoToWebinar control panel up. There's a great way to pose questions in the chat box there, add questions. And so we'll be keeping an eye on that. And if there are questions we can address during the webinar, we'll definitely get to them. Otherwise, we'll be following up with everybody individually afterward. It's also good to know that appsheet.com/support houses all the articles, of which we have many. Gwen, do you know how many articles we have? It's hundreds?
Yeah.
Thousands, maybe?
Maybe.
Tens of thousands of articles about AppSheet. That might not be true. It's at least hundreds. And they go into great detail. You can search through those articles, and there's a great sort of how-to instruction for a lot of the features. There's also there are good links to tutorials, to our YouTube channel, where there are tons of good snippets or recordings of previous webinars where we've dug into other apps or been doing Q&A, answering specific questions. The community, which is community.appsheet.com, is a great place to meet other app creators. The entire AppSheet team is in there and generally pretty active. And so if you have questions, or if you've just built something really cool with your app and you want to share it, please do so there. There are a lot of active users there. And then finally, this is Peter again. I'm joined by Gwen, who's supervising this operation. And I think we're going to go ahead and dig into this app and get started. I'll do the obligatory audio and video check. If everybody can hear us and see the screen okay, feel free to leave a comment in the GoToWebinar panel, but I think we're set to start digging in here.
We got responses from Marcus, Robert,
Great.
Brian. Thank you for.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marcus. Okay. So I think maybe we should just open up and look at the actual sales management app and poke around for a second. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch over. I have a bunch of tabs open. Don't be too intimidated, especially compared to Gwen's Chrome right now. It looks like I have a bunch of tabs open. I can't even, Gwen's just a bunch of little triangles on top of her Chrome browser because there's so many packed in there. It's going to be a busy Thursday. All right. So let's, I'm just going to restart this app to show everyone how it opens up by default. So this is a sales management app, and that sounds kind of vague, but the overview, in general, this is really focused on reporting and giving, let's say, a sales management team or a sales ops team a way of analyzing sales performance by time or by salesperson. That's kind of like the core of it. And the premise here is that we're talking about auto sales. And so see, these are car salesmen. And so this app is designed to consolidate that all into one place and kind of give you some visuals and ways of slicing the reports and viewing it by different parameters. And this is all in a dashboard form. So I think we're going to start with the basics and how the data is set up and how the views were made. But then this app creator got pretty fancy with how they were combining views into different dashboards. So let's open this up and take a look. What we have here is a preview in tablet form, which I could see this team using this app on a tablet. That definitely makes sense to me. I think I could also see them using a fair amount just on their laptop or full screen in their browser. So maybe we just switch to that for most of the demo. And it just defaults to this quarterly year-to-date view. And so this is just some reports on quantity of different models of cars sold. You can see there's a little bit of summary, there's a little bit of custom formatting that's been applied with the colors and the styles and the icons. And so let's switch over to reports. This is where things get really fancy. What we have here is a dashboard view. So you can see there are 4 different views here. This is a view of those car sales. Then we've got some other views that actually are what we call deep links to a more dedicated either view of a table or a view of a chart. So we can hop around and see, okay, Q4 performance by salesperson. I can dig into here and see how many Audis were sold, or this particular Audi. Let's see, what am I looking at here? Oh, John's performance for Audi. I can look at a quarterly, let's see, just the overall quarterly report. Let's look at Q2. So I can see the cars, the makes sold by salesperson. So, and then there are some other reports here, some other views, but this is, I think, just an example of a pretty robust dashboard that's been built, and you can see that's in the reports tab. This is where we started, which was just overall car sales. You can see it's pretty detailed report by month and also by quarter. And then we have another view here that is just simply that quarterly view, and so this is giving us these like an easier way to navigate to different views, right? In the menu of this app, we have some other more specific views that maybe you aren't using quite as frequently, and so we've left them up in the menu. And you can see there's an example of like personnel. So these are all these salespeople that are associated with those sales. And so this is just a very simple view showing a list of those salespeople. And then if you click in, it will show the detail for that particular person. pretty standard fields. You got some performance by quarter, but then you also have like a top sales field here, which I think this one is, this is just an example that we can kind of revisit, but looking at all of their sales and then picking out what is the top so far. Also in the menu, we've got a little breakdown, like a chart of those cars, the different types of cars that are being sold. Looks like Mitsubishi is on top. And so this is just kind of the general breakdown. We have a bunch of different views, bunch of different ways of kind of analyzing prior performance. And so this app, AppSheet at its core, gives you a few different ways of kind of working with your data sets. One is collecting data and adding it. Two is you can edit it. So if you have an existing table like this, you connect it to AppSheet, you have a really easy way of adding to it, editing those existing rows, those existing fields, then also just displaying it. So if a lot of your data is read-only, or you want to give it just read-only access to your users, a dashboard may be an example where it's predominantly read-only, but you give a really easy way of interacting with it and jumping to different views. And so this is where we're kind of leaning towards the read-only side of the spectrum in this example. So I think maybe as a place to start and to start looking at the AppSheet editor, let's think about the personnel table. I think that's the easiest way to get started here, and easiest way to start thinking about the data. Does that sound good, Gwen?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's explain what are the tables we have.
Yeah. So this is the data set that's being used, and it's a Google Sheet, but just to recap, you can connect to a variety of different data sources. So to Google Sheets is very common. If you have an Excel sheet hosted really anywhere, Dropbox, Box, on 365, you can connect that Office sheet similarly. And so in this case, we have just a centralized Google Doc, a Google Sheet that has different tables down here. And you can see that these kind of generally correspond with what you were seeing in the preview of that app. So we've got makes of cars, car sales. We have the data for those different months and for those different quarters. You can see the car sales. We have links to different car images. You may have noticed that in the car sales, we've got little previews of what the car looks like. This looks fake. I think this is a toy Lamborghini. And then the salesperson associated with it. Then you have a list of just salespeople. And then in this table, we actually also have their quarterly performance. We've got an image for them, so those are the headshots we saw, and we've got emails associated with them. And these emails are all the same, but I think the prime example would be everybody has a unique email. That email is something later on you can use to control the level of access that your app users have to the platform. So something that's good to know, especially if you're just getting started and thinking about security and thinking about visibility and customizing visibility. When you log into an AppSheet app, vast majority of the time you're going to be requiring email login to your app. And when you do that, you can show certain views or show certain data only if it's associated with the email that you've logged into the app with. So I think I just want to throw that out there. That's something that's good to keep in mind. An example would be, let's say, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but let's say that I'm generating a bill of sales, vehicle bill of sales for, I'm a salesperson. I'm generating a bill of sales for a bunch of customers that I have. And if I have a table where those are all accruing, and I have my email address associated with each of those rows, I may set up my app so that when I log in, I'm only able to see those bill of sales that I've created, as opposed to what all the other salespeople have created. Just it's one example. We know that's not how this is set up right now, but it's good to keep in mind.
One other idea is, as a salesperson, for example, John, he can only see his performance, all of the quarterly, monthly sales data. But as an app creator, which a lot of times can be sales director or VP of sales, he can access all of the data in the app.
Great. Yeah, exactly. And so then we have a table for quarterly reports. Now this looks a little different. This doesn't have our typical data set. And we'll get to this a little bit later, but really what this is a table of shortcuts. And so just like in the app, we saw that in the dashboard, there were easy ways to navigate to different views. We're going to use a table as a way of creating shortcuts to quickly get you to some of those charts that are created as views in AppSheet. And you can see that this is the same too for the salesperson charts. So these are shortcuts to quarterly reports, salesperson charts. And I think we also saw that in other vehicles here. Yep, we'll put these together. So this is pretty straight. I mean, there's a lot of information here, but really we've just got sales information by time, and then personnel and the types of cars that are being sold. So let's jump into AppSheet and just see how these different tables were thrown together. Okay. I always love starting with the spec, with the AppSheet spec. So if you haven't seen this yet, if you have an app or if you've copied a sample app, for example, and you go into info and you go to spec, you can get kind of a quick automatically generated summary or diagram of the relationships of tables in your app. And so this one happens to be particularly, I don't know, what would you call this? Cool looking? This is a good example of different slices being created off of different tables with a bunch of different ways of viewing that information. And some of them are related. Some of these tables are related to each other, but a decent number of them are just kind of standalone. And so, and that's a good example of, you know, a dashboard app, which if you're just trying to display data, then, you know, you may not need a ton of different relationships set up. So very quickly, properties, this is where you can fill in information. So when you're prepping your app, especially as you're getting ready to actually deploy it, it's good to fill in this information so that the end user has a little bit more context, a little more information for how to get started and how to use the app. And then as you're building, you'll see little notifications, little orange or red dots appear as you know, maybe you build something that doesn't work. There will be errors on the top of the screen trying to guide you for how to fix it. You can also go to this errors section where you'll receive those warnings and then some recommendations for how to fix what you're working on. In this case, we have some warnings, but nothing too serious to keep moving forward. All right, and so of the core sections of the AppSheet editor here, our tables are connected here in data. So we've got data, customizing the interface, customizing behavior, actions, and workflow. These are the three core sections you're gonna be spending most of your time. And you can see that those tables here are kind of a mixture. They're all connected, but then the permission level for these are a mixture of you know, add, update, and delete, or just read only. In our case, for the vast majority of this, it could be read only. Let's look at how the columns are set up. So this is where, first and foremost, when you connect your data to AppSheet, AppSheet is going to try to interpret what is the type of data for each column. But if you go to data, once it's connected, go to data and columns, and let's look at personnel. This is where we were starting. Just to confirm that that column type has been interpreted correctly. And so this is where there are a variety of different column types. And these will help dictate some of the functionality, especially if you're creating forms, especially if you're collecting data. The column type will give you a way of collecting that data, of interfacing with the form in a variety of different ways. One really good example, which we don't really illustrate here in this app, is what am I looking for? Signature. Actually, I do have an example to show later. But for example, if you want to collect a signature, if you create that signature, if you set that column type as signature, that will actually prompt a custom signature field where you could collect signatures on your tablet or smartphone. Lat long, for example, will collect your current location, or you can move and customize it via a map. So good to keep this in mind. Where is barcode scanning? Oh no, that's okay. Sorry, that's something different. So something else, just to throw this in here. This is a little
you have to click on it and then turn
on this guy.
The scannable.
Yeah. Okay. So I lost my train of thought here for a second, but another really useful way of adding data, which it could be relevant for this, if you want to, for example, scan a vehicle identification number, VIN. Let's say we're going to go ahead and add. Oh no, we'll say the ID is the VIN. If you go in here into the editing the column definition, and you scroll down and you make it scannable, what will end up happening is when you are with the form you're filling out for that particular field, you'll have the option, a little icon will appear for barcode scanning. And so from your device, you'll be able to scan in whatever data is in the barcode, whether it's a typical 2D barcode or a QR code, that will be inputted for that field. Same as if there's an NFC tag available for scanning. All right, let's keep moving along. So we've got our column types confirmed. And you can see that there have been a couple virtual columns added. And really the gist of these, we can take a quick look at them. But the gist of this is that is providing, wait for it, this top sales information. So best year-to-date sales or top sales, that's what these virtual columns are giving. And so you can see that like this best year-to-date sales is actually referencing the car make table. And so when I click on this, it actually shows me the Lexuses that Henry has sold. And then this custom formatted field down here, top sales, 712 Lexus, that is being generated by this virtual column. And so these get a little granular, and I don't want to spend too much time on here, but just as an example of how this works. This max sales, this column type is a number. And what we have is a custom formula. And so if you click on the little flask, it's a flask or a beaker?
Flask.
There's a little vodka flask in the corner of all the, no, the little it's a beaker. Yeah, beaker, flask, test tube, it's one of the three. So when you click on that, you'll get the expression builder. This is something you should get into early on. If you're newer to AppSheet, it can be a little overwhelming at first, but this is going to be where you can build some really powerful controls and really draw out some kind of unique actions or views. And so very roughly what we're saying is from the car sales table year to date for this salesperson, what is the maximum sale that they had, and just kind of draw it out. And so when you verify, you can see the expression is valid. And so for these virtual columns, they technically don't exist in your data, but you're able to add those on. And then with those virtual columns, you're able to incorporate them into the different views you create in your app. And so that's why back in this view in the personnel detail, even though these fields don't show in the actual data you have, you're creating them in AppSheet. But just to reiterate, AppSheet is still only the middleman. All your data will always live back in its central source, in its main source, and all we're doing is just interfacing with it and then slicing and dicing it with these virtual columns to display it in different ways. Okay, so there's a lot more with the tables and columns, I think, to think about, but I want to jump into the UX because some of the core functionality of this particular app is how we're combining different views into this dashboard view. And let's see, I just want to scan a couple questions. Yeah, so Steve mentioned would it be better to have an ID column in each table with unique ref for use as a key, and that's something that that I think you know, depending on what you're trying to reference, there's some cases where, you know, let's say the email address could also be used as a key and as a unique ID. There are other times, and actually let's pull this out. This is an important point, and this app still has a little bit of work to do in refining the different relationships. But let's actually look back at this. So car sales. Well, let's see. Okay, in the personnel, yeah, we have a blank ID here. So this was set up to provide a unique ID, and in this case, I think right now the unique ID, we're just referencing the name. Does that sound right, Gwen?
Yeah. So if you go to the column, you can see the personnel table. Let's go to the personnel table. Yeah, personnel table. You can see the column 12, which is best year-to-date sales. It's a ref. That means personnel table is connected with car sales table.
And got it. And because right now, because all the names are unique, fortunately in our case, all the salespeople have unique names, and so we're using it as a key.
Right.
And in this case, we're referencing those best year-to-date. We're referencing the car sales table, and in the car sales table, let's see. Oh, the reference is actually to the new cars by make. Let's see. So if we go to new cars, car sales, new cars by make, this is also unique. Really what it is we're referencing the, this is set up a little bit unique, and actually I think we'll send up a follow-up just kind of with an overview of referencing tables and making sure that you have a unique ID and a key set up for those references. This one's set up a little bit funny, but I think that's a good question, Steve. It's a good thing to call out. When you're creating relationships between your tables, the key is the function of doing it, and the main way to do it is, let's say, you know, in this case, we're building a reference, best year-to-date sales. So I want to find for this particular person in the personnel table, I'll set the column type as reference, and I'm going to reference and point to
car sales table.
The car sales table in order to draw that out. It's kind of conceptually like a VLOOKUP, but pointing it that way, then making sure that you just have unique ID, and that the key is associated with that is the best practice. In this case, we're going to gloss over this one a little bit because this one's set up a little funny. So let's jump back to the views here. So there are a variety of, first of all, you see a ton of menu views that have been created, but not all of these menu views are actually in the menu. And so Gwen pointed this out to me just last night. If you have a bunch of views, sometimes your view may be, well, first of all, AppSheet, when you connect your data, AppSheet will just begin by creating a bunch of views for you. And so you'll have a functional prototype already kind of live when your data is connected. Some of those views will be reference views, which means they're kind of hidden in the background, and then only pulled out if you like link directly to them, or if through your relationships you pull up that view. Otherwise, you can set, when you create a new view, in this case, the view name is cars. And it's related to car sales, and it's a chart, and it's located in the menu. Now this one is available in the menu here, but if you wanted to just remove it from the menu and make it available to view later on, in this case with these links, what is it? You just set the show if to false.
Yeah, false.
And so just simply by making this false, you're removing it from the menu. We won't do it for now, but that is kind of why you see a whole bunch of different what are labeled as menu views that don't actually appear in the menu right now.
Yeah, go to log. I think log is hidden here.
There you go.
Yeah.
So then log though is accessible though from the dashboard, right?
Only if you can. Only if there's a deep link you can click.
Got it. And that goes back to kind of like our reports here. These are the deep links you're talking about, right?
Right.
So in this case, I don't think there happens to be one to log, but let's look at this is kind of like the meat of this app, which is how this dashboard is set up and how we're linking to some of these different views. So let's take a look at that. Okay, and so those views in the menu down here in the footer of your preview, you've got car sales, quarterly reports, and reports dashboard. I kind of think the reports dashboard is that should be like the default view, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go real quick. I'm going to go into options, and you'll have some interface options here in general. The starting view is quarterly year to date. I'm going to change that. Oh my gosh, look at all these views we've got. I'm going to change this to reports, right? And so I think that those three that are visible, it kind of goes in order of what you see in the UX screen. So reports dashboard is what I want to start with. I'm going to make that the default.
You want to turn off the start with about.
All right, and then we'll turn that off.
Yeah.
So that we just get right down to business. And so now interviews, when we're looking at the reports dashboard, you can see very simply it is just set up as a dashboard view. For those of you that have been around AppSheet for a little while, you'll see that there is a new view here without an icon. That's because it's in beta version just internally right now, and apparently our icon isn't working. This is kind of a fun thing that if we have time at the end here, we'll be able to show. But basically, there are some similar to spec. There are some natural language ways of searching and sorting and displaying information from your tables. And so this is just kind of a different view that we're going to be adding in here very soon that you'll have access to in order to find that. But for the time being, so what we're looking at is a dashboard view. It's linked on the right there. And so the view entries, this dashboard consists of these 4 different views. And that's kind of what we were looking at before, these 4 different views. And each of those views is related to a particular table, in your data. So the car sales, this is pretty straightforward. This is a table. This is showing the monthly and quarterly performance. We've got an image in there. We've got salespeople related to them. That's a kind of a typical dashboard view. Where it gets a little unique is in the quarterly reports, the salesperson charts, and the other vehicles. And remember, if you look back in your tables, let's look at the quarterly reports. Really, these are links to other views that have been created.
Right.
So quarterly reports, we have it set as small. If we look at the app, that's this section right here. So if I click on quarter 2, this is bringing me now to the whole the sales performance for quarter 2. And so let's look back at the view, but this particular view, right, and see exactly what's being pulled out here. Okay, so if we go to quarter 2, that's one I clicked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quarter 2. Let's find that view. I think it should be this guy, right?
Yeah.
And so you can see this is probably, even though this shows as like a menu option, it's probably hidden, right? I don't think, the only reason why we have it, yeah, false. So we're only showing that if you click through that deep link. Now, in this case, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gwen, but this could just be a reference. It doesn't necessarily need to be in the menu and then hidden. I could just make this a reference view and still deep link to it. I'm pretty sure that that'll work just as well. But in this case, it's a hidden menu item. And so this particular view, quarter 2, which we've pulled up from the dashboard, is looking at a slice of data. Okay, and we'll hop over to that in a second. But it's looking at a slice of data, and it's just sorting the new cars by make, and then it's grouping by salesperson. And you can see then it's got a group aggregate. So for each group, so it's counting the number of cars sold. So if we look back at this, you can kind of see how that ends up displaying.
The number of car makes.
Oh, the car makes, yeah, the car makes. Sorry, not number that are sold. So again, the salesperson, it's grouped by salesperson and then count by those new car makes, which is ascending. And then you can guys see there's Henry, Joe, John, Josh. And so that's how this quarter 2 view has kind of been created. And it's really a combination of making that unique view, making a table with the deep links, and then incorporating that into the dashboard. Let's hop back a little bit. So that is where we came right there. You can see like the salesperson charts. So these are quarterly charts related to the salesperson. And then we've got a stacked graph and a year-to-date sales by person. And so these are other deep links that should be represented in our salesperson charts. And you can see right there. And so if we go back into salesperson charts, let's just do Q1. And you can see performance across those different salespeople. And in this case, Q1, let's look at the view that this is linking to. So you can see here all those, the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 salesperson charts. We clicked on Q1. This one's also built off of a slice. It's a histogram. The group aggregate, you can see, is a sum of Q1 totals. And then each column is a salesperson. Let's look back and just kind of look at how that displays. Now this chart happens to be blue. Maybe you've created a different color for each column just so it's easily recognizable. And that's where some of the UX chart colors come in handy. As you're thinking about just displaying, customizing how different text or different labels are displayed, the format rules are really good thing to keep in mind. They're hidden in here a little bit, but this is really how you can distinguish your app, add different icons based on different statuses. And so you can see some of the format rules that have been set up in this app kind of coincide with some of those icons that you've seen in the app. So like other vehicles, for example, has a little triangle pointing at it. So do the quarterly reports. And so you can see that here. Go to the quarterly reports. A good example of the format rules, and really how I think the best use case for format rules that I've seen is when you have a particular entity that has a status and that you're moving along through different statuses. And so based on the status of that entity, the formatting changes. So maybe you have something that, this is separate from the sales report app, but maybe you've got an item that has a due date. And you've set up a virtual column to tell you how much time until that due date. And so it's live, that's constantly changed, there's constantly ticking down and changing. And as the value changes, your format rule will be set up based on that value. And as you get closer to the due date, maybe you change from blue to red as to sort of increase urgency. Okay, so there's some examples here of linking to other views within this app that we've created based on, from these tables. Then we've got control equals that view. I was hoping to just show an example of linking externally to another app that's related. Should we do that now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've set up a separate app that's kind of related to this one that can help generate a vehicle bill of sale. So if a transaction is going down where the car is being sold between two people, really what we have in this dashboard app is just for viewing reports and viewing data. But most teams that are working in AppSheet have kind of a portfolio of apps they're using that all kind of relate to each other or are relevant to each other. And so in this case, from this dashboard, when you go into behavior, which we haven't opened up yet, you've got some actions, some workflows and reports that you can make. And actions are a great way of linking or changing behavior. So let's just pull up this example. So I've created a bill of sale action. And what this particular action is going to do is go to another AppSheet app that I've created. But anytime you set up an action, it can do a variety of different things. I think the most common action, well, first of all, the most common default actions are to add a row, so submit a form, to edit an existing row, or when people start, you can go to a website or start a phone call. So if you have URLs or if you have phone numbers or email addresses in your table, AppSheet will generally automatically generate those actions that are related to that data types, and you'll see that in behavior and actions. You'll see those that have been automatically generated. In this case, I want to link to an entirely different AppSheet app, and so the target is very simply, this is in your expression builder. It's linked to app, and then in this case, the full app name, which is bill of sale generator dash its number. And so I'm going to hop over here and just show you what this looks like. So when you're in your other app, in the URL and in the app information, you can get that app name. But But this is really, this bill of sale generator, it's just a very simple form. I hit new, and it's just basically a way of generating a PDF. So I want to just run through this really quickly as an example of form and adding data and then generating a report off of it, because it's related. So let's hop over. This is the separate app, and it's based on this table, which is really just a simple, give me all the information about the car, give me a little bit of information about the seller and the buyer. And in this case, we're going to use that signature field that I mentioned. And that has information like the email, the car amount, the date, and then all those details about the car. And I'm going to go ahead and I threw in like a reference to a bunch of different car makes. And so you can see back in the app, the make, this is a really simple reference. I'm going to reference the other table called make. And so because of this reference, when I'm generating a new bill of sale, I don't have to type in the car make. I can just do the drop down and go ahead and pick Jeep. So when I fill in all this detail, select a color and complete this. What I've done then in the behavior is set up a workflow to generate a PDF. So this PDF it's looking at the bill of sale table, and anytime that I create a new one or I update an existing one, and in this case the condition is just if it's been created today, then I'm going to send that final report to the seller of the car and the buyer of the car as an email. That email is just simply going to say your motor vehicle bill of sale is attached, and then it's going to have a PDF attached. So I've created an attachment template, and that's what we see here. And so I've just thrown in all those different fields that are being completed by the form into this pretty standard template, Google Doc template. And so when that form is completed, it will be sent out to the email. And so I just as an example, this is how it ends up appearing. This was like the email alert that was received with an example, and you can see that those signatures are captured and displayed in that template that's been set up. So this is kind of a tangent here, but I want to make sure that we touched on real quickly just how you can kind of capture that information and automatically generate a report from a form. And in this case, this bill of sale generator is going to be linked directly from this sales report demo update. So in the use case, I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be most relevant to be able to jump into this, but maybe you have one or multiple or dozens of different relevant apps to kind of support your auto dealership. And so this is just one way of very easily linking to that. And so when I'm looking at a view, for example, and I see this little icon, which is the document icon, and I click that, actually I'll do it from the main report or from the main app. This is just where it happens to be right now. But when I click this action button, it's going to switch me right over to that bill of sale generator, and then gives me a really easy way of just starting to generate a new bill of sale right away. Okay, so that was a long-winded way of just making sure it was clear how you could link outside to other apps. Because really, at the end of the day, I mean, Gwen, how many for people that are using AppSheet, I mean, the vast majority are using multiple apps, right? They don't just come in and build one app.
Right.
It ends up being kind of a suite of different apps that they want that are generally related to each other.
A lot of time they start with solving one specific problem, and then the more they know about the AppSheet, they want to create more apps to solve other problems. And then a lot of times we suggest is to keep one app to achieve one goal or to solve one problem. That's why you can keep your data in one place. But sometimes you want a different app talk to each other, different data talk to each other, so that you can put data from other apps or other data located in other apps.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder. That's a good point too. Is that the data you may not have access to all the data you need that's relevant to the app functionality you have, and so this could be a good example where maybe the marketing team controls the bill of sale generator. They're the one that creates the template and that gives you the means to generate a new document. And so being able to link to an app that they've created, or being able to just draw from the data from the tables that they own. Another really common example is this personnel table. We have it located in our data source, but maybe maybe the HR team is the one that manages the table of employee data. If you have hundreds of employees, that's constantly updated by a separate team. Really, when you're connecting these data sources or the different tables, all you have to do is get access from your different teams, and then that way you're not, it's not redundant. You're not just recreating, copying and pasting, and having to manage that data that's already being managed somewhere else.
Right. Even for one team, for example, in the sales team, you can have sales reports app, or you can have sales quote app, or other type of apps. In this case, for example, when you land on the reports dashboard, you can find, okay, hey, this brand or this person is a top performer. I really want to look into more details why this person excels. If I click on a person, I want to see what are the quotes that person is giving to customers. Is that because of his quote is very low? That's why he's selling a lot of cars, or is it some other reasons?
Got it. Yep. So let's see. Okay. So we're getting towards the end of the hour here, and this app that we've been demoing, it has a lot in it, and we're trying to cover the essentials and kind of dig into some of the details. So before people start heading out, we will definitely follow up with some examples of some more granular kind of functions in this app. And I think we'll share this as a sample app. We'll make it available to everyone so that you can copy it. You can either reference it and kind of poke around in it, or you can copy it into your own account and then modify it how you like. A couple other things I think are really important to know for this app, but just relevant for all apps and whatever app you're working on right now, is when it comes time to, when you've got it in a place where you want your initial batch of users to help you provide feedback on the app, on your prototype, and also just early on, you want to make sure you start sharing with end users earlier on and start getting some of that feedback. And so, adding users is pretty straightforward, just sending those user invites. If you have people that you want to share access, that you want to help create the app in the editor, you can add them as a co-author. And you can also change those roles here for existing invited users. And once those users are in there, something that I think is undervalued is the broadcast notifications tab. And so, maybe in this example, we've got a team of like a dozen salespeople or so that are using this app or viewing it as a dashboard. But whether it's a dozen or a couple hundred or a couple thousand, when you broadcast notifications, it'll send a push notification just like any other mobile app you have and give you some information. You give all your users relevant information. You can even deep link them into the app. So if you wanted to send out an announcement to your entire sales team saying, okay, everybody go in there and look at this particular section that I just added. Look at this particular view that I just added. Or, for example, I have a link now to this bill of sale generator. I'm going to link you directly to this, and I want you to just poke around and figure out how it works. This can be really helpful for just getting all your users on the same page. When they're in there using it, then, when they're in the app, when you go to the menu, every user can provide feedback. So this is another good thing, I think, to share. And so you'll receive this in email form, but all your users, especially early on, as you're just making sure the app is efficient and valuable to everyone that you're sharing it with, get your initial batch of users to share feedback this way. And that could be a helpful way of just making sure it's working well. Okay, I think this is the gist of it. And I think just to reiterate, this is one example of an app of kind of an infinite number of apps that can be created. This particular app is really centered around kind of this dashboard, high-level view-only type of interface. A lot of apps, though, are going to be based more around collecting data or editing existing data. And so that's something I think next week, we'll probably have one that's focused much more on collecting data and some of those different column types and different ways, different types of fields that you can have in a form in order to really easily let people just from their mobile device collect data. So I think we'll switch and we'll focus a little bit more on that next week. But otherwise, we have a bunch of questions here that I want to just kind of review for a little bit. But if you have to hop off now, feel free to, we'll send a follow-up email, and feel free if you have any questions that you think of in the meantime to send them our way. And then we'll be going to the community. So again, that's community.appsheet.com. Any questions that we'll be answering, we're going to try to put there to make sure that everybody sees it and is able to reference this. Any follow-up information in regards to where you can access this app, we'll email it out, we'll put it in the community, and then we'll be sharing this recording on our YouTube channel. And we'll probably be cutting some snippets of this too, just to pull out some relevant parts. So if you have to hop off now, thank you very much for joining, and feel free to come next week again as we kind of go through the fundamentals, but looking in the context of a different app. And then I'm going to go ahead and just jump into the GoToWebinar questions right now, just kind of scan through them and see if there's anything we can touch on. So one question, Steve, you mentioned the display name for an inline view. And that display name, you should be able to change it, similar to how you can change the display name for other views. It just so happens that inline views, and just so that other people can kind of see what that is mentioning. Actually, I don't know if I have an example offhand here, but an inline view is automatically created when two tables reference each other, or when a table references another table. And so a good example of this is like if you have employees, if you have a table of employees, and it references projects they're working on. What will happen is an inline view with a list of those projects will be visible when you look at that employee's record. So let's see here. Actually, okay, so personnel inline. Steve, if you're still there, let's see. I wonder, I'm gonna have to follow up with you individually. because I'm blanking offhand how you change the name of that. Gwen, do you remember how, for an inline view, how you can change the name?
The name of the view?
Yeah. Yeah, Steve, you might be right that there's not a way.
Oh, there's no display name.
Yeah, because I guess ideally that doesn't have like a place to view it. Is there? We'll follow up with you individually, because I'm pretty sure that there is a way, and I'm not thinking of it offhand. It's separate from, it's not the typical way that you change a view name. A couple other questions that are little that aren't easy to demo directly from this existing app, and so I'm sorry we weren't able to touch on them right now, but we'll follow up individually, and I'll pull up some examples from apps that do have the relevant. We've got some questions about, let's see, like inventory. Let's see, scanning a barcode. Yeah, so we'll follow up with some of those individually and add them to the community. So if you want to see answers to those, definitely go join the community, and I'll spend some time there today. Gwen, is there anything else you'd like to add, or should we shut down until next week?
Do you want to talk about integration, Salesforce?
Oh yeah. Okay. So for those of you guys that are still here, what we didn't get to today was what's particularly relevant for the sales environment is integrations, especially integrations with different CRM systems. So a couple examples that we have here. What I want to do is jump into Manage. In the editor, if you go to Manage and Integrations, you'll start seeing this is a section of the app that is being built out right now, and that there's a lot of functionality that's recently been added. And so you'll see that you can receive, they're basically in and out integrations. Out has existed for a while, and more functionality is being added here, but you've had some ways of pushing information out from AppSheet for a long time now in a variety of different ways. Coming in, on the other hand, is something a little newer, and really what this means is an example would be if you have a new deal or a new contact, for example, in Salesforce or HubSpot or Zoho, or really any type of CRM, you have the ability to either integrate directly with AppSheet, or use a service like Zapier to help pull that information in. So I want to call out just a couple examples. Salesforce you can integrate directly with as a data source. And so just like you would connect to a Google Sheet, you would connect to your Salesforce account. And so if you have a scenario with where you really want to build out kind of a custom mobile interface or a custom way of collecting data and making sure it's synced back with Salesforce, that's something that is very doable. And a lot of teams that use AppSheet, I think, use it in a way that is similar to what would be offered through the App Exchange. So if you have a certain type of functionality, so maybe SurveyMonkey is a paid app in App Exchange. Maybe it's not exactly what you want to exactly what you need. So what you can do is just use your AppSheet account for similar and kind of build out your custom app, connect it to your Salesforce account, and it from a 10,000 foot consideration, it's kind of comparable to how you would be using apps from App Exchange. This example, really quick, I wanted to draw from regarding HubSpot. This uses the Zapier integration, and so back in your app, this is an in integration. And so when this is enabled and you've connected it to Zapier, there are instructions we'll follow up with. So if you want to connect to our beta Zapier integration, This gives you some really cool ways of connecting to any of the apps that are in the Zapier ecosystem. And HubSpot happens to be one of those. And so in this example, you could use HubSpot as a trigger and say, anytime a new deal or a new contact is created in HubSpot, then you can invoke an action in your AppSheet app. So maybe in this case, we anytime a new deal is created in HubSpot, we invoke an action in AppSheet. And this action will come from our sales report demo update app, specifically the table car sales. And then the action could be that bill of sale action that I created that links out to this other app. So this is kind of a convoluted example, but it's just one, just a really quick way of saying, okay, if there's a new deal in the CRM, then I'm going to go ahead and generate a new bill of sale. And so then, this isn't fully set up. This isn't the entire example, but there's kind of an infinite number of ways that you could then interface with your existing CRM, or quite honestly, whether it's with a direct integration or just saying, maybe you have email notifications that are coming from a CRM. You could pull that into Zapier and parse it and turn it into a new row that's used by your AppSheet app. So I wanted to throw that out there because it's relevant for the sales world, connecting to those CRMs. But this is another conversation for another time. There's a ton of detail here that we can get into, and feel free to reach out to us with questions and pose them to the community, because I know a lot of people are starting to experiment with that, and it's working well for them. Thanks for coming, Rosie. Just got your comment. So I think we're out of time. We've kept you guys long enough. Thank you again for joining this morning. Let's see, control panel's up. Yeah, thank you all for joining. I hope this was a valuable run through of some of the functionality. Just a reminder, we do this every week, every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific. And once a month, we're going to send out an invitation soon to our once a month office hours, which will be much more Q&A oriented, where we're going to be accumulating some tougher kind of power user type questions and then running through those in detail. Whereas these weekly webinars, we're going to try to keep kind of covering the basics and just get a sense for how to get up and running. All good at your end, Gwen? All right, great. Thank you guys again for joining. Have a good Thursday and a good weekend, and we'll hopefully see you next week.